The throne room was cold. It was always cold. The walls were made of pale blue crystal that grew from the ground of Valoria, and they never held warmth. Princess Lie had grown up in this cold. She had learned to stand tall in it, to keep her face calm and her voice steady. But today, she could not hide her shock. "Mother," she said, her voice breaking the silence like a crack in ice. "You cannot be serious." Empress Mevin sat on the high throne, her silver robes falling around her like water. Her face was old and tired, but her eyes were still sharp. She looked at her daughter without blinking. "I am always serious, Lie. You know this." Lie stepped forward. Her silver skin, the mark of royal blood, seemed to glow under the pale lights of the chamber. Her long white hair fell past her shoulders, and her violet eyes were wide with disbelief. "You want me to marry a human?" she asked. "A human?" The word felt strange on her tongue. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only discovered how to travel between stars 300 years ago. Before that, they had been trapped on their small blue planet, fighting among themselves, knowing nothing of the wider universe. To the Valorian Empire, which had ruled for 10,000 years, humans were like children. Loud, messy, and short-lived. "Yes," Mevin said simply. "A human, but why?" Lorraine's voice rose. She knew she should stay calm. A princess did not shout. But this was too much. "We are Valorians. Our bloodline stretches back to the first stars. We do not mix with lesser species. We do not bow to anyone." Mevin closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, there was something in them that Lorraine had never seen before. It was fear. "The Keth swarm," Mevin said quietly, "has taken 17 of our border worlds in the last 2 cycles. Lorraine felt her stomach drop. She had heard reports, of course. Everyone had. The Keth were a nightmare species. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They only consumed. Their ships were living things, grown from dark flesh and bone, and they moved through space like a plague. When they found a world, they stripped it bare. They took everything. The land, the water, the air, the people. Our fleets have tried to stop them," Evan continued. "We have lost 60% of our military strength. The Keth do not stop. They do not tire. And they are coming here, Lie. They are coming for Valoria." Lie shook her head. "Then we fight harder. We build more ships." We have tried," Mevin cut her off. "We have tried everything. Our allies have abandoned us. The Torvin Collective says they cannot spare forces. The Neth Federation claims they must protect their own borders. No one will help us." She paused. "No one except the humans," Lie laughed. But there was no humor in it. "The humans. Mother, they are primitives. They have been in space for only 3 centuries. What can they possibly offer us?" Mevin stood from her throne. She walked slowly down the steps until she stood before her daughter. Up close, Lie could see how tired her mother truly was. There were lines on her face that had not been there a year ago. The weight of the Empire was crushing her. "Do you know why the Keth have never attacked human space?" Mevin asked. Lie frowned. She had not thought about it. The humans held only a small section of the galaxy, far from Valorian territory. They were not important enough to notice. "I do not know," she admitted. "Because the Keth tried once," Mevin said. 50 years ago, a Keth swarm entered human territory. They attacked a colony world called New Busan. The humans had only 2 million people there. The Keth sent 300 ships. Lorraine waited. She expected to hear about a massacre. "The humans won," Mevin said. Lie blinked. "That is impossible." "It's not." "The humans lost half their population. Their cities burned. Their ships were destroyed. But they did not surrender. They fought in the streets. They fought in the buildings. They fought with guns, with knives, with their bare hands. And when the Keth ground forces tried to harvest the survivors, the humans detonated nuclear weapons on their own soil. They killed themselves along with the enemy rather than be taken." Lie felt cold. Not the cold of the throne room. A deeper cold. "The Keth retreated," Mevin continued. "They have never returned to human space. Do you understand now, daughter? The Keth are afraid of humans. The only species in the galaxy that has ever made the swarm run is humanity. Ray did not know what to say. She had always thought of humans as weak. Their bodies were fragile. They lived for only 80 or 90 years. They had no natural weapons, no claws, no armor. But the story her mother told painted a different picture. It painted a picture of madness. "They are insane," Ray whispered. Perhaps Mevin agreed. "But they are also survivors. And right now, they are our only hope." Ray turned away. She walked to the tall window and looked out at the city below. Valoria Prime was beautiful. Towers of crystal and light reached toward the purple sky. Gardens floated between buildings, filled with flowers that had bloomed for 1,000 years. This was her home. This was what the Keth wanted to destroy. "What are the terms?" she asked without turning around. "The humans have offered a full military alliance. They will send their fleets to defend our borders. They will share their weapons and tactics. They will fight beside us until the Keth are defeated. And in return..." Mevin was silent for a moment. "They want a bond, a symbol of unity between our peoples. They want a marriage between their representative and a member of our royal family." Ray closed her eyes. "Me. You are my eldest. You are the heir to the throne. A marriage between you and a human would show the galaxy that our alliance is real. It would show the Keth that we are no longer alone." "Who is he?" Ray asked. "This human I am supposed to marry? His name is Kong Tae-ho. He is 29 years old. He is a soldier and a diplomat. He has fought the Keth before and survived. The humans consider him one of their best." Ray finally turned around. Her face was hard, but her eyes were wet. "I do not want this, mother." Mevin walked forward and took her daughter's hands. Her touch was gentle. "I know, my child, I know. But I am asking you to save our people. I am asking you to do what I cannot. Meet this human. See what he is? And if he is truly as terrible as you fear, we will find another way. But if there is even a chance that this alliance can save Valoria, we must take it." Ray looked into her mother's eyes. She saw love there. She saw desperation. She saw a queen who had run out of options. "When does he arrive?" Lee asked. "Tomorrow." Lee pulled her hands free. She walked past her mother toward the door of the throne room. She stopped at the entrance and spoke without looking back. "Oh, I will meet him. But I will not pretend to be happy about it." Then she was gone, her footsteps echoing through the cold crystal halls. Mevin watched her go, then sank back onto her throne. She looked up at the ceiling, where ancient murals depicted the glory of the Valorian Empire. "Please," she whispered to no one, "let this work." Outside the palace, the sky was darkening. Somewhere in the void between stars, the Keth swarm was moving, and somewhere else, on a small human ship, a man named Kong Tae-ho was preparing to meet his future bride. None of them knew how much everything was about to change. Ray did not sleep that night. She lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about what was coming. A human. She was going to marry a human. The idea felt wrong in every way. Her people lived for 500 years. Humans lived for less than 100. Her people were tall and graceful, with silver skin and eyes that could see in the dark. Humans were soft and pale and ordinary. What could she possibly have in common with such a creature? When morning came, she dressed in her formal robes. They were deep purple, the color of the royal house, with silver threads woven through the fabric. She looked at herself in the mirror. She looked like a princess. She felt like a prisoner. A servant came to tell her that the human ship had arrived. Ray followed her through the palace halls, each step feeling heavier than the last. Her mother was already waiting in the greeting chamber, along with a dozen guards and several court officials. Everyone looked nervous. Ray took her place beside her mother and watched the great doors. Her heart was beating fast, though she tried to hide it. She imagined what the human would look like. Tall, maybe? Loud and arrogant, certainly. Humans were known for their pride. They called themselves the future of the galaxy. They believed they were special. Ray found this amusing. A species that had only been among the stars for 3 centuries thought they were special. The doors opened. Li Rei blinked. She had expected soldiers in heavy armor. She had expected weapons and displays of power. Instead, she saw a small group of humans in simple, dark uniforms. There were only 5 of them. They carried no visible weapons. They did not march or stomp. They walked quietly, calmly, like guests arriving for dinner. At the front of the group was a man. He was not tall. He was not large. He had black hair cut short and a face that was neither ugly nor beautiful. His eyes were dark brown, and they moved around the room slowly, taking in everything. When his gaze reached Li Rei, he paused for just a moment. Then he looked away. He stopped before the throne and bowed. It was a proper bow, not too deep and not too shallow. He had studied their customs. "Empress Mevin," he said. His voice was calm and soft. "Thank you for receiving us. I am Kang Tai-ho, representative of the Human Alliance." "I am honored to be here," Mevin nodded. "Welcome to Valoria, Representative Kang. We have heard much about you." "I hope not all of it was bad," Tai-ho said. There was a small smile on his face. Li Rei felt a flash of irritation. Was he making jokes? This was a formal meeting. He should be serious. Mevin gestured toward Li Rei. "This is my daughter, Princess Li Rei. She is the one you have come to meet." Tai-ho turned to face Li Rei. He bowed again, just as properly as before. "Princess," he said, "I know this situation is not what you wanted. I know you did not ask for this. I want you to know that I am not here to force you into anything. I am not here to own you or control you. I am here because our peoples need each other, and because I believe we can help each other survive." Li Rei raised an eyebrow. She had expected arrogance. This was not arrogance. This was something else. "Pretty words," she said coolly. "But words are easy. What can one human truly do against the Keth swarm?" Tai-ho met her eyes. He did not look offended. He did not look angry. He just looked at her with those calm brown eyes and said, "Would you like to find out?" Before Li Rei could respond, a door burst open at the side of the chamber. A young officer ran in, his face pale with fear. He fell to his knees before the Empress. "Your Majesty," he gasped. "Emergency report. A Keth raiding party has attacked Convoy 7. 12 ships destroyed. Over 3,000 civilians stranded near the Hollow Belt. The escort fleet is gone. The survivors are sending distress signals, but our nearest rescue ships are 6 hours away." The room went silent. Li Rei felt her blood go cold. 3,000 people, stranded in space, with the Keth hunting them? Mevin rose from her throne. "Send word to Admiral Sorel. Tell him to redirect whatever forces he can spare." "Majesty, Admiral Sorel says his ships are engaged at the border. He cannot then find someone else." Mevin's voice cracked with frustration. In the silence that followed, Tai-ho spoke. "How far is the Hollow Belt from here?" The officer looked at him with confusion. 2 hours by fast ship, but the Keth are already there. Any rescue attempt would be suicide, Li Rei finished. You would be flying into a death trap. Tai-ho nodded slowly. "Yes, probably." He turned to one of the humans behind him, a woman with short hair and tired eyes. "Hannah, how many people do we have on the ship?" The woman named Hannah answered immediately. 15 combat ready. Medical supplies for about 200. That is not enough, Li Rei said. The Keth raiding parties travel with at least 30 drones. You would be outnumbered and outgunned. Tai-ho looked at her. "I know." Then he turned and started walking toward the door. Li Rei stared at him. "Where are you going?" He did not stop. "To help them? Did you not hear what I said? You will die." Tai-ho paused at the doorway. He turned back to face her, and for the first time Li Rei saw something in his eyes. It was not fear. It was not pride. It was something she did not have a word for. "Maybe," he said quietly. "But those people are scared and dying. They are floating in the dark, watching their air run out, waiting for monsters to come and take them. Someone should stand with them. Someone should tell them they are not alone." He paused. "Even if that someone cannot save them, at least they will not die alone." He turned and walked out. The other humans followed him without a word. Ray stood frozen. She looked at her mother. Mevin's face was unreadable. "He is insane," Ray whispered. "Perhaps," Mevin said. "Or perhaps he is exactly what the stories say humans are." Ray thought about what her mother had told her yesterday. About New Busan. About the humans who had chosen to die rather than surrender. She had thought that story was about madness. But watching Taiho walk calmly toward almost certain death to help strangers, she wondered if maybe it was about something else. Before she knew what she was doing, Ray was moving. She pushed past the guards and ran down the hallway. A servant called after her, but she ignored them. She reached the hangar bay just as Taiho's ship was powering up its engines, but she did not try to stop him. Instead, she went to her own ship. It was a small stealth craft, fast and quiet. She climbed inside and started the engines. One of her guards shouted, "Where are you going?" Ray did not answer. She lifted off and flew out of the hangar. Following the human ship into the dark sky, she told herself she was going because she needed to see. She needed to know if the stories about humans were true or if they were just lies. She needed to understand what kind of creature she was being asked to marry. But deep down, in a place she did not want to look at, she knew there was another reason. The human had looked at those desperate strangers and decided their lives were worth his own. He had not hesitated. He had not calculated. He had simply gone. Ray had never seen anything like that before, and she needed to understand. Why? The two ships flew through the void toward the Hollow Belt, where 3,000 people waited for rescue and where the Keth waited for blood. Behind them, Valoria grew smaller and smaller until it was just another light in the endless dark. Ahead, there was only the unknown. The Hollow Belt was a graveyard of broken ships and floating rock. Once it had been a mining zone, rich with rare metals. Now, it was just debris, spinning slowly in the cold light of a distant sun. Ray watched through her ship's window as the human vessel dove into the mess of wreckage, moving fast and low to avoid detection. She followed at a distance, keeping her stealth systems active. Her ship was invisible to most sensors, but she was not sure about the Keth. No one really understood Keth's technology. Their ships were alive, grown from flesh and bone, and they sensed things in ways that machines could not. The distress signal was coming from a cluster of civilian transports hiding behind a large asteroid. Ray could see them now. 12 ships huddled together like frightened animals. Some of them were damaged, leaking air and fuel into space. Around them, like sharks circling wounded prey, were the Keth drones. There were at least 30 of them, maybe more. They were ugly things, shaped like insects, with too many limbs and mouths that never stopped moving. They had not attacked yet. They were waiting. The Keth liked to wait. They liked to let fear build before they struck. Taiho's ship burst out of cover and flew straight toward the cluster. Ray's breath caught in her throat. What was he doing? He was announcing his presence to every Keth in the area. The Keth drones reacted immediately. They turned as one, their bodies twisting toward the new threat. A dozen of them broke away from the cluster and rushed to meet the human ship. Taiho's vessel opened fire. Bright beams of energy cut through the dark, hitting 3 drones and sending them spinning away in flames. But more were coming. Too many, then Ray understood. Taiho was not trying to destroy the drones. He was trying to distract them. He was pulling them away from the civilians. The human ship landed hard on one of the damaged transports, magnetic locks grabbing onto the hull. The side doors opened, and figures in combat suits poured out. There were only 12 of them, just as Hannah had said. 12 humans against 30 Keth drones. Lirae switched her view to thermal imaging. She could see the humans spreading out across the transport's outer hull, taking positions behind cover. She could see the Keth drones closing in, their claws reaching, their mouths screaming sounds that could not travel through the vacuum, but still seemed to fill the silence. The first drone reached the transport. A human soldier stepped out from behind a piece of wreckage and fired a rifle at point-blank range. The drone's head exploded. The soldier was already moving, dodging as another drone swept past, its claws missing by inches. All across the hull, humans and Keth clashed. The drones were faster, stronger, harder to kill, but the humans would not retreat. When one soldier fell, another took their place. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they pulled out blades and fought hand to hand. Lee Ray watched a young human woman take down a drone with a knife. The drone was 3 times her size. It did not matter. She stabbed it in the throat again and again until it stopped moving. Then she stood up, covered in alien blood, and looked for the next enemy. How? Lee Ray thought. How are they doing this? She found Taiho on the far side of the transport. He was carrying a child. A Valorian child, no more than 5 years old, with pale silver skin and terrified eyes. A drone was chasing them, its claws tearing up the hull as it ran. Taiho shoved the child into a safety pod and turned to face the drone. He had lost his rifle somewhere. All he had was a pistol. He fired once, twice, 3 times. The drone stumbled but did not fall. It lunged at him, one claw catching his shoulder and tearing through his suit. Blood sprayed into the vacuum. Freezing instantly into red crystals, Taiho did not scream. He did not fall. He grabbed the drone's claw with his bare hand and pulled himself close. Then he shoved his pistol into the creature's mouth and fired until it was empty. The drone collapsed. Taiho fell to his knees beside it, clutching his wounded shoulder. Hannah appeared beside him. She was shouting something, pulling him up, wrapping something around his wound. Other humans were gathering now, forming a circle around the damaged section of the transport. The Keth were still coming, but there were fewer of them now. For 20 more minutes, the battle raged. Lee Ray lost count of how many times she thought the humans would be overrun. Each time, they held. Each time, someone stepped forward to fill a gap, to take a wound, to buy 1 more second of survival then. Finally, reinforcements arrived. 3 Valorian warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and opened fire on the remaining drones. The Keth, finally outmatched, began to retreat. Lee Ray sat back in her pilot's seat. Her hands were shaking. She'd seen battles before. She had watched recordings of wars, studied tactics, learned about strategy, but she had never seen anything like this. The humans had been outnumbered and outgunned. They had faced certain death, and they had won no, she thought. That was not quite right. They had not won because they were stronger or smarter or better armed. They had won because they had refused to lose. She flew her ship to the transport and landed beside the human vessel. When she stepped out onto the hull, she found Taiho sitting against a piece of wreckage. His shoulder was bandaged, but blood was still seeping through. Hannah was beside him, treating another soldier whose leg was badly burned. For humans lay still on the hull. They were not moving. They would never move again. Lee Ray walked over to Taiho. He looked up at her with tired eyes. "Princess," he said. His voice was weak but calm. "I was not expecting to see you here." Lee Ray did not know what to say. She looked at the dead humans, then at the living ones, then at the Valorian civilians being helped out of the damaged ships. She saw children crying with relief. She saw old people hugging each other. She saw 3,000 lives that still existed because 12 humans had decided they were worth dying for. "You could have been killed," she finally said. Taiho agreed. 4 of your people were killed, yes. His voice grew quieter. "I know their names. I will remember them for the rest of my life." "Why?" Lee Ray asked. The question burst out of her before she could stop it. "Why did you do this? These people are not your people. This is not your empire. You had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Why risk your life for strangers?" Taiho was silent for a long moment. He looked at the stars, at the debris field, at the distant light of the sun. "Because they were afraid," he said finally. "Because they were alone. Because someone needed to tell them that the universe is not as dark as it seems." He looked at Lee Ray, and his eyes held no pride, no arrogance, no self-satisfaction. They held only a simple, tired truth. That is what we do. That is who we are. We protect each other, all of us. Human, Valorian, anyone who needs help. Because if we do not, then what is the point of surviving? Lee Ray had no answer. She stood there in the cold vacuum of space, surrounded by the aftermath of battle, and felt something crack inside her chest. It was small, just a tiny fracture. But it was the beginning of something new. She did not understand humans. She was not sure she ever would. But for the first time since her mother had told her about the marriage, she wondered if maybe understanding them was worth the effort. Maybe they were not so primitive after all. The weeks after the rescue were strange for Lorraine. She returned to the palace, resumed her duties, attended meetings, and spoke with diplomats. But her mind was never fully present. It kept going back to the Hollow Belt, to the sight of humans fighting and dying for people they had never met, to the calm way Tai-Ho had answered her question. That is what we do. That is who we are. She found herself watching the humans more closely. Tai-Ho remained at the palace as the formal representative, but he had brought others with him. Hannah, his sister, had set up a medical station in the lower districts of the capital. She treated Valorian patients without asking for payment. Lorraine heard stories about her working through the night, refusing to rest until every wounded person was stable. Admiral Park. Giwan arrived a week later to discuss military strategy with the Valorian Council. He was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes. Lorraine expected him to push for terms that favored humanity, to demand resources and territory in exchange for protection. Instead, he fought for fair treatment of Valorian soldiers. He argued that the alliance should be equal, that neither side should be seen as lesser. "We are not here to conquer you," he told the council. "We are here to stand beside you. There is a difference." Lorraine sat in the back of the chamber and listened. She was starting to believe him. But it was Tai-Ho who confused her the most. He was not like other diplomats she had met. He did not try to impress anyone with fancy words or grand gestures. He ate simple meals. He wore plain clothes. He spent his mornings training with her guards, learning their fighting styles and teaching his own. He spent his afternoons visiting the wounded from the Hollow Belt, sitting by their beds and listening to their stories. One evening, Lorraine found him in the palace garden. It was one of her favorite places, a quiet spot where floating crystals cast soft light on beds of silver flowers. He was sitting on a bench, looking up at the sky. "May I join you?" she asked. He looked surprised, but nodded. She sat beside him, leaving a careful distance between them. "You have been busy," she said. "There is much to do. You visited the hospital again today." "I heard the staff talking about it." Tai-Ho smiled slightly. "Your people are kind. They remind me of my grandmother. She always said that true strength is measured by how you treat the weak, not by how you fight the strong." Lorraine was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been bothering her for weeks. "Your people live such short lives, 80, 90 years at most. Some of you do not even reach that. How do you bear it?" Tai-Ho tilted his head, thinking, "I suppose we do not think about it the same way you do. To us, every day is precious because we know it might end. We love harder because we know love will not last forever. We fight harder because we know we only have so much time to make a difference." He paused. "It makes us reckless sometimes, impatient. We want to do everything, see everything, be everything, and we know we cannot. But we try anyway." "That sounds exhausting," Lorraine said. Tai-Ho laughed. It was a warm sound, unexpected in the quiet garden. "It is very exhausting, but also very. Alive, we burn fast, but we burn bright." Ali looked at him. In the soft light of the crystals, he did not look like a primitive or a lesser being. He looked like a man who had seen too much and still found reasons to hope. "You are different from what I expected," she admitted. "So are you," he said. "I expected a cold princess who wanted nothing to do with humans. Instead, I found someone who followed me into battle and watched 12 strangers risk their lives without looking away." Lorraine felt heat rise to her cheeks. It was an unfamiliar sensation. "I wanted to understand. Did you?" She thought about it. "I am beginning to." They sat in silence for a while. The sky above Valoria was filled with stars, each one a sun, each sun surrounded by worlds. So much life out there, so much death. The Keth were coming. Everyone knew it. The real battle was still ahead. "Are you afraid?" Lee Ray asked quietly. Taiho considered the question. "Yes, I am afraid of dying." "Afraid of failing?" "Afraid of losing the people I care about." He looked at her. "But fear does not stop us. It never has. We learned long ago that the only thing worse than being afraid is letting that fear control us." "Your species is strange," Lee Ray said. But there was no scorn in her voice anymore. Only wonder. Perhaps Taiho agreed. Or perhaps all species are strange and we just show it more honestly. Over the following weeks, Lee Ray found herself spending more time with Taiho. They walked through the gardens together. They ate meals in the small dining room, reserved for family, rather than the great hall where diplomats performed for each other. They talked about their homes, their families, their fears. Taiho told her about Earth, the blue planet where humans had been born. He described oceans that covered most of the surface and mountains that touched the clouds. He told her about his parents, farmers who had grown rice in green fields, and about his grandmother, who had told him stories about heroes and monsters. Lee Ray told him about Valoria, about the crystal cities and the floating gardens, and the long history of her people. She told him about her father, who had died in a war before she was born, and about her brother Sorath, who was too young to understand how much danger they were in. "He asks about humans constantly," she said one evening. "He wants to know if you really eat your meat raw and drink the blood of your enemies." Taiho choked on his tea. "What? No? Where did he hear that?" "Old stories. Propaganda from the last century. Your people were considered quite frightening when you first arrived in the galaxy." "Frightening?" Taiho shook his head. "We were terrified. Suddenly there were aliens everywhere. We thought we were alone in the universe, and then boom, 100 different species, all more advanced than us. We spent the first 50 years just trying to prove we were not a threat, and now?" Lee Ray asked. Taiho smiled, but there was something sharp in his eyes. "Now we have learned that sometimes being a threat is the only way to survive." Lee Ray thought about the Keth, about the stories of human soldiers who refused to surrender, about the drones she had watched explode under human fire, about the bodies of those 4 soldiers on the transport hull. "You scare them," she said. "The Keth. My mother told me they have not attacked your space since the Battle of New Busan." "We scare everyone," Taiho said quietly. "Even ourselves sometimes. We are capable of great kindness and great cruelty. We can build and destroy with equal passion. It is why we need others to remind us who we want to be." He looked at her with those calm, steady eyes. "Perhaps that is why this alliance matters. Not just for military strength, but because we are better when we are not alone." Lee Ray felt her heart shift. Another crack in the wall she had built around herself. This one was bigger. "Taiho," she said, and it was the first time she had used his name without his title. "I think I may have been wrong about you." He smiled. "Only about me?" "About all of you. About humans?" He reached out and very carefully took her hand. His skin was warm against her cool silver fingers. "Thank you," he said. "That means more than you know." They sat together in the garden, 2 people from different worlds, and watched the stars turn slowly overhead. The war was coming. The Keth would not wait forever. But in that moment, in the quiet peace of the crystal garden, neither of them thought about the future. They only thought about now. And for the first time, now was enough. The Keth came on a cold morning when the twin moons of Valoria still hung in the sky. Lee Ray woke to the sound of alarms screaming through the palace. She ran to the command center and found her mother already there, surrounded by admirals and officers staring at holographic maps filled with red. "How many?" Mevin asked. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "Over 1,000 ships," Admiral Sorrell reported. "The main swarm fleet. They are not raiding this time. They are coming to end us." Lee Ray looked at the map. The Keth fleet was a massive cloud of red moving toward the green dot that was Valoria. Their own defenses were a thin line of blue, desperately outnumbered. Then more blue appeared on the map. Coming from the opposite direction? Coming fast. "Human fleet entering the system," an officer announced. 300 ships. Admiral Park Ji-won is requesting connection. Park's face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but calm. Empress Mevin, we are here. Tell us where you need us. Mevin closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were wet. Thank you, Admiral. Thank you. The battle that followed would be remembered for 1,000 years. The combined human and Valorian fleet met the Keth swarm in the space between Valoria and its outer moon. Ships clashed in the darkness, beams of energy cutting through the void, explosions blooming like flowers of fire. The Keth were many, but the allies were fierce. Human ships threw themselves into the gaps where Valorian defenses were weakest. Valorian cruisers covered human carriers when they needed time to launch their fighters. Li-Ray stood on the bridge of the flagship beside. Taiho, she had refused to stay in the palace. If her people were going to fight, she would fight with them. We cannot hold them, Admiral Sorel said grimly. There are too many. They will break through within the hour. Taiho stepped forward and opened a communication channel. His voice went out to every human ship in the fleet. This is Kong Taiho, he said. I know you can see the numbers. I know you know what they mean. Some of us are not going to make it home tonight. He paused. But behind us is a world full of people who are counting on us. Valorian children who have never seen a Keth ship. Human colonists who came here to build a new life. Families who just want to live in peace. He looked at Li-Ray, and she saw something in his eyes. It was not fear. It was fire. We do not fight because we think we will win, Taiho continued. We fight because some things are worth dying for. Freedom is worth dying for. Family is worth dying for. And the people standing beside us, whether they are human or Valorian or anything else, are worth dying for. His voice rose. So we hold, we fight, and we do not yield. Not 1 inch. Not 1 step. Not 1 breath. Today we show the galaxy what humanity means. A roar came back over the channel. Every human ship, every soldier, every pilot, screaming their answer. The sound filled the bridge, filled the fleet, filled the space around them like thunder. The Valorians stared in amazement. Then, one by one, they began to join in. Valorian voices mixing with human ones, creating a sound that had never been heard before. The sound of 2 species becoming one. The human ships surged forward. What happened next would become legend. Human vessels rammed into Keth carriers, their crews fighting hand-to-hand in the wreckage. Pilots flew their damaged ships into swarm clusters, detonating their cores to clear paths for others. A cruiser called the Soul Star took 17 direct hits and kept firing until its weapons melted. Its captain sent one final message. For Earth. For Valoria. For everyone. Admiral Park Ji-won led the final assault personally. His flagship, the Incheon Dawn, broke through the Keth lines and headed straight for the command vessel at the center of the swarm. The command vessel was a massive thing, a living mountain of flesh and metal that controlled the entire fleet. If we destroy that ship, the swarm will fall apart, Park said over the channel. All remaining ships, follow me. 23 ships followed him. Only 6 made it through. Li-Ray watched on the screen as the Incheon Dawn collided with the command vessel. Its engines overloading, its crew still fighting. The explosion was so bright, it turned the darkness into day. When the light faded, the command vessel was gone, and the Keth fleet was breaking. Without their controller, the drones lost coordination. They began to scatter, to flee, to tear each other apart in confusion. The Allied fleet hunted them down, ship by ship, till there was nothing left but debris. Valoria had survived. Li-Ray fell to her knees on the bridge. She was crying. She did not know when she had started. Around her, officers were cheering, hugging, weeping with relief. But all she could think about were the ships that had not come back. The humans who had died for a world that was not their own. Taiho knelt beside her. His face was pale, his eyes red. He had lost friends today. He had lost Admiral Park, the man who had been like a father to him. But he was still there. He was still alive. What? We did it, he said quietly. It is over, is it? Li-Ray whispered. Is it ever really over? He took her hand. No, there will always be more battles, more enemies, more darkness. But that is why we keep fighting. That is why we hold on to each other. Because as long as we stand together, the darkness cannot win. 3 months later, the wedding took place. It was not a cold political arrangement anymore. It was a celebration. The people of Valoria lined the streets, throwing silver flowers as Lee Ray walked to the great temple. Humans stood among them, laughing and cheering. Lee Ray wore a gown of white and silver, the colors of peace and hope. Taiho stood at the altar in a simple dark suit, the same calm expression on his face as always. When Lee Ray reached him, she took his hand. The priest began the ceremony, speaking words that were older than starship travel. But Lee Ray was not listening. She was looking at Taiho's eyes. Those brown, human eyes that had seen so much and still managed to hope. When it was her turn to speak, she turned to face the crowd. Her mother was in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Her brother Sarath was bouncing with excitement. Hannah was crying openly. And behind them, filling the temple and the streets beyond, were the people of two worlds. I once asked my mother why I must marry a human, Lee Ray said. Her voice carried across the crowd. I thought humans were weak, short-lived, primitive. She smiled. I was wrong. Humans are fire in mortal form. They burn fast, but they burn bright. And they light the way for everyone around them. She looked at Taiho. This man taught me that true strength is not about how long you live. It is about how you live. It is about standing up when others fall. It is about protecting strangers because they need help. It is about loving harder because every moment matters. She squeezed his hand. I am proud to stand beside him. I am proud to call him my partner. And I am proud to call his people our allies, now and forever. The crowd erupted in cheers. Taiho leaned forward and kissed her, soft and warm, and Lee Ray felt something she had never felt before. It was not the cold of duty or the weight of tradition. It was fire, and across the galaxy. Other species watched the broadcast. They saw a princess who had learned to love a human. They saw two people standing as one, and they began to understand something important. Humanity would not be stopped. Humanity would not be conquered. And humanity would burn the stars themselves to protect what they loved. The age of fear was ending. The age of fire had begun.